There is something unsettling about narcissists that most people miss entirely, and it has nothing to do with the words they speak. Words are rehearsed, polished, sharpened into weapons of charm or seduction. But the body, the body betrays them. Beneath the perfect sentence, behind the dazzling smile, lies a silent language that cannot be faked forever. If you learn to read this language, you will see what almost no one else notices: the raw hunger for control, the predatory alertness, the constant calibration of power. It is not the dramatic gestures that reveal them, but the subtle ones, the slight tightening around the mouth when you speak, the microexpression of contempt when they are contradicted, the way their posture leans not in curiosity, but in conquest. A narcissist's body does not converse, it performs. And yet, in the cracks of that performance, you glimpse the truth they work so hard to hide. They will feign empathy, but their eyes glaze in impatience. They will offer a reassuring touch, but the grip lingers too long, ownership disguised as care. Once you see it, you can never unsee it. And this is why it becomes dangerous. For them, because their mask slips, and for you, because you can no longer claim ignorance. Machiavelli would have smiled at this. The true battle is never fought in words, but in the silent arena where the body confesses what the tongue denies. To notice this is to step outside the illusion, to hold power where others are blind. Machiavelli understood a truth that most people still fail to grasp. Power is not announced, it is performed. He observed centuries ago that rulers, leaders, and manipulators never reveal their intentions directly. Instead, they build appearances, they choreograph gestures, they control perception. This is the essence of the prince. That survival and dominance are not about honesty or transparency, but about managing how others see you. And this is where the narcissist becomes a living embodiment of Machiavelli's teachings. They may not have read him, they may not consciously quote his words, but their bodies act out the same theater of power he described. While their mouths speak charm, humility, or compassion, their bodies whisper possession, contempt, and calculation. Machiavelli would have recognized this double game instantly. He would say, "Watch not what they declare, but what they cannot help but display." The narcissist's smile may dazzle, but the tilt of their head signals superiority. Their words may flatter, but their posture announces conquest. They rehearse every sentence, but they cannot fully mask the predator beneath the performance. In Machiavelli's world, appearances were everything. Yet he also warned that appearances eventually betray reality to those sharp enough to see, and this is the key. Only a few notice because most are hypnotized by language and blind to gesture. The narcissist thrives in that blindness. They exploit the gap between what is said and what is silently revealed. Their body becomes the stage where Machiavelli's philosophy of calculated dominance is enacted every day, not in grand palaces or royal courts, but in boardrooms, relationships, and conversations over dinner. To legitimize this insight, one must return to Machiavelli's core lesson. Human beings are not guided by lofty ideals, but by power, fear, desire, and appearances. Narcissists intuitively know this. They know that controlling the narrative requires controlling the stage presence, and the stage presence is written in the body. The way they occupy space, the way they delay their responses to make others lean in, the way they mirror only to manipulate. These are not accidents. These are the bodily expressions of Machiavellian instinct. And while the crowd listens to words, the attentive observer sees the performance for what it is. A mask, carefully crafted, slipping in microseconds. Thus, invoking Machiavelli is not a rhetorical flourish. It is a reminder that what he witnessed among princes and rulers is the same psychology now acting in narcissists around us. They are actors of dominance, using their bodies as scripts of hidden intent. And once you learn to read this script, you no longer need to rely on what they say. Their power, as Machiavelli predicted, is never declared openly. It is enacted in silence. To recognize this is to pierce the illusion, to see what is usually invisible, and to understand that even centuries ago, the philosopher of power had already mapped the game narcissists are still playing today. The body language of a narcissist is never casual, never neutral, and certainly never accidental. It is a performance, a stage play, where the body becomes both actor and script, designed to control the psychological atmosphere of every interaction. Words may serve as decoration, but the true manipulation lies in the silent orchestration of gestures, expressions, and posture. Each subtle movement has intent behind it, even when it appears spontaneous. What most people miss is that the narcissist MS body is not simply moving through the world, it is broadcasting dominance, intimidation, or seduction in ways that bypass rational thought and go directly into the unconscious of others. This is why so many fall under their spell without realizing it. They do not consciously choose to trust, fear, or follow the narcissist. They are silently led into it. Consider how a narcissist uses space. They rarely shrink themselves. Instead, they expand, leaning back in a chair as if they own the environment, spreading their arms across the table, standing with legs wide to occupy more ground. These are primal signals of power, rooted in animal dominance displays. The message is clear. I am larger, therefore I am in control. This has nothing to do with physical size, but with psychological impact. The narcissist knows that others unconsciously register dominance cues, and they exploit this instinct ruthlessly. Even silence becomes a weapon. Where an ordinary person might feel awkward in prolonged quiet, the narcissist lets the silence linger, using it to make others feel unsettled, as if they must fill the void. That silence is not absence, it is pressure. Then there are the microexpressions, the flashes of truth that slip through even the most disciplined mask. A slight tightening of the jaw when contradicted, the brief roll of the eyes before the smile returns, the flash of contempt when someone challenges their narrative. These are milliseconds of exposure, cracks in the facade where the predator beneath is revealed. The narcissist cannot fully erase them, because the body responds faster than the conscious mind. Yet most people ignore these signs, dismissing them as meaningless. In reality, they are the moments where the mask slips, and the true dynamic of control is revealed. Touch, too, is rarely innocent. A hand placed on a shoulder may seem affectionate, but pay attention to the grip. It lingers longer than comfort, signaling ownership. A hug is delivered with a firmness that feels like a cage. Even the way they shake hands communicates hierarchy. Too strong, crushing to assert superiority, or deliberately limp to signal contempt. Every physical contact is a test, a performance of subtle domination disguised as warmth or familiarity. The narcissist's eyes are perhaps the most deceptive tool of all. They hold longer eye contact than normal, not to connect, but to pin. Their gaze is a hook, engineered to make the other person feel scrutinized, vulnerable, or spellbound. In conversation, they tilt their head just slightly upward, as though they are perpetually looking down on you, even if they are physically shorter. These gestures are rehearsed through repetition. The narcissist learns, over time, which bodily signals achieve the reaction they desire, and they refine them like an actor perfecting a role. What makes this so insidious is that the mechanism is largely invisible to the untrained eye. Most people assume body language is spontaneous, authentic, a window into true feeling. With narcissists, the opposite is true. Their body language is camouflage, manipulation dressed as authenticity. It is precisely because it looks natural that it is effective. You believe the smile, but do not notice the predatory stillness of the posture. You hear the flattering words, but miss the controlling hand on your arm. You sense the warmth of attention, but overlook the way their body angles slightly away, ready to withdraw power the moment you no longer serve their needs. This is the theater of the narcissist, dominance hidden in charm, intimidation masked as confidence, seduction veiled as generosity. Each gesture is both mask and weapon, calculated to bypass awareness and control the emotional field of those around them. To see this theater clearly is to rob them of their greatest strength, the invisibility of their performance. Once you learn to notice, the illusion shatters, and the body that once seduced you becomes the very evidence of manipulation. Speaking with a narcissist is never truly a conversation. It is a performance. Imagine sitting across from an actor on stage who knows every line of the script, every gesture of the role, but whose body cannot help but betray the reality behind the mask. The narcissist plays the role of the attentive friend, the loving partner, or the competent leader, but their body leaks a different truth. They may lean forward as if interested, but the tension in their shoulders suggests predation, not curiosity. They may smile warmly, but their eyes remain cold, unlit, betraying calculation instead of connection. The body becomes the stage where the contradiction plays out. Charm in the words, control in the posture, and contempt hidden in fleeting expressions. Picture the way a narcissist feigns vulnerability. They might lower their voice, soften their tone, and speak of hardships or pain, but their body remains rigid, as if armored. The chest does not truly relax, the hands remain too still, and their gaze flickers to see how you are reacting. Vulnerability is supposed to be a surrender of control, but with them, it is a tactic. Their body reveals that even in their supposed openness, they are orchestrating the scene, measuring whether you are being pulled into their narrative. The performance may be convincing to someone untrained, but once you notice the stiffness beneath the softness, the manipulation becomes visible. Think of the predatory lean. In normal conversation, someone leans in to listen, to share intimacy, to connect. The narcissist leans in differently. The movement is sharp, sudden, a calculated encroachment of space. You feel yourself recoiling without knowing why, as if a predator has closed the distance between you. Their words may remain light, even flattering, but their body signals dominance, a test of boundaries. They are not leaning in to hear you better. They are leaning in to make sure you know who holds the power. Even their laughter tells a story. The sound may ring convincingly, but the body does not follow. The shoulders remain stiff, the eyes unsoftened, the posture unbroken. Real laughter shakes the frame, but theirs is practiced, hollow, a tool to disarm or charm. And when the performance is over, the laughter stops instantly, the mask sliding back into place with mechanical precision. To the unaware, it seems like charisma. To the trained eye, it looks like theater with too much rehearsal. Consider also the way they listen. They give the illusion of attention, nodding at the right moments, maintaining eye contact, echoing your words back to you. But their body betrays impatience. The foot taps softly beneath the table, the fingers twitch, as if holding back interruption. The torso leans not toward you but angled slightly to the side, already preparing to redirect the conversation to themselves. They are not absorbing your words. They are scanning for weaknesses, for points of entry where their narrative can dominate yours. The metaphor of the stage is not just poetic, it is precise. In every interaction with a narcissist, you are in an audience seat watching them play a role. They costume themselves with charm, they rehearse empathy, they deliver lines of flattery or concern. But the stage lights of body language reveal the cracks, the slip of contempt in a glance, the unnatural rigidity of posture, the aggressive ownership in a touch. If you watch carefully, you realize you are not speaking with an authentic person at all, but with a character designed to control the scene. The tragedy is that many people never see this because they focus on the words. They are dazzled by the performance, hypnotized by the script. But if you pay attention to the body, the stiffness, the predatory lean, the eyes that never truly smile, you begin to see the truth. Talking with a narcissist is not dialogue, it is theater. And in that theater, their body is the most honest actor on stage, exposing what their mouth works so hard to conceal. The central problem when dealing with narcissists is not their words, but the space between their words and their bodies. This gap is where the mask lives. Most people, untrained in reading it, fall into the illusion because they assume coherence. If the mouth says kindness, the body must mean it. But narcissists thrive on that blindness. Their greatest power lies in exploiting the contradiction between appearance and reality. They speak of care while their posture radiates superiority. They promise loyalty while their eyes betray contempt. They play the role of the attentive partner, yet their body angles away, already searching for the next stage. This is the conflict every victim experiences without fully naming it, the gnawing sense that something feels off, though nothing explicitly contradicts the narcissist's words. That unease is the unconscious noticing what the conscious mind ignores. When you laugh with them, but your chest feels heavy. When they praise you, but you feel strangely diminished. These are not accidents, they are signals of the mismatch, proof that the body is leaking truth while the mouth scripts lies. The danger is that once you believe the performance, you surrender power. You start doubting your instincts, telling yourself you must be misreading, because their words sound right. But in that self-doubt, the narcissist tightens control. The conflict then is not only external between mask and reality, but internal, between your intuition and your rationalization. To escape, you must learn to trust the silent signals, for it is precisely in that hidden gap, between what is said and what is silently revealed, that the narcissist exerts their most subtle and devastating form of dominance. In daily life, the narcissist's body language is everywhere, but it often hides in plain sight. At work, imagine the executive who leans back in the chair during meetings, arms crossed, not in self-comfort, but in defiance, erecting a barrier that says, "I am untouchable." His silence is not passivity. It is a psychological wall designed to make others justify themselves, to make colleagues lean forward while he leans back, forcing the dynamic of power without a single word. The body becomes the fortress of his authority, and others unconsciously adapt to its presence. In relationships, the performance takes another form. A hand resting on a partner's lower back might look tender, but the pressure is slightly firm, almost branding. It is not affection. It is ownership disguised as intimacy. The partner feels cared for yet also confined, subtly reminded of who dictates the boundaries. In public, the same partner might step half a pace ahead, guiding with invisible strings, creating a hierarchy by posture alone. The illusion of closeness masks the reality of control. Among friends, the narcissist may dominate the space with exaggerated gestures, spreading arms wide, laughing loudly, touching shoulders too often, claiming the center of gravity in the group. It looks like charisma, but beneath it is territoriality, a constant assertion that they are the one around whom the circle orbits. And when someone challenges their dominance, the shift is immediate. Eyes narrow, the jaw tightens, the shoulders square, and the energy of the group bends under the weight of unspoken intimidation. Even in casual encounters, the archetype repeats. The co-worker who hovers too close when speaking, violating personal space not out of warmth, but to unbalance you. The neighbor whose handshake is deliberately crushing, a test wrapped as a greeting. The friend who uses mimicry, mirroring your gestures or expressions, to create false rapport, only to later twist it into leverage. Each of these scenarios reveals the same archetypal pattern: the body as weapon, the gesture as disguise, the performance as control. Once seen, it cannot be unseen. Every context, whether professional, romantic, or social, becomes a stage where the narcissist uses posture, expression, and proximity to silently sculpt the power dynamic. And what seems ordinary, a hug, a smile, a touch, becomes, under sharper vision, evidence of manipulation dressed in the costume of normal life. What at first seems like a collection of random gestures, crossed arms, lingering touches, a steady gaze, reveals itself under deeper scrutiny as something far more intentional. It is not just body language in the casual sense. It is strategy. It is Machiavellian psychology translated into flesh and posture. The narcissist does not simply express themselves through the body. They weaponize it. Every tilt of the head, every pause of silence, every calculated smile becomes part of a larger game of influence. They understand, whether consciously or instinctively, that words can be debated, but bodily signals bypass logic. A gesture slips under the radar, planting impressions directly into the unconscious, where resistance is weakest. This is the philosophical shift, to realize that what we are observing is not communication, but warfare, not conversation, but stagecraft. The narcissist is not just someone with toxic habits, they are practitioners of silent domination. Like Machiavelli's prince, who cultivates appearances to secure obedience, the narcissist cultivates micro-movements to secure submission. They don't need to shout commands. Their body speaks for them with an authority that feels invisible yet undeniable. You find yourself yielding, adjusting, second-guessing, without ever hearing a direct order. That is the genius of this form of manipulation. It cloaks itself as natural behavior, while functioning as precise strategy. When you reinterpret their behavior through this lens, the entire dynamic transforms. The smile that seemed charming is reclassified as bait. The silence that once felt uncomfortable now reads as a trap to make you reveal more. The confident stance you admired reveals itself as a declaration of dominance, designed to shrink your presence without your awareness. Suddenly, the everyday becomes a battlefield of influence, where your psyche is the territory being conquered. This is why Machiavelli is the perfect authority here. He knew that power is rarely declared openly. It is staged, embodied, and performed until the audience confuses control with charisma. The great reversal, then, is understanding that the narcissist's body is not betraying them accidentally. It is serving them deliberately. What others might dismiss as quirks or unconscious signals are, in truth, the silent weapons of someone playing the oldest game of power. Once you see it, you realize you are not simply watching a person behave, you are watching a strategist maneuver. And in that realization, the illusion collapses, because the weapon only works when unseen. The pattern of a narcissist's body language always unfolds in cycles, and once you learn to recognize it, the repetition becomes undeniable. At the beginning, they present gestures of openness, seduction dressed in subtle signals. The smile seems warm, the gaze attentive, the body angled toward you in what looks like interest. They lean in just enough to suggest intimacy, to make you feel seen, chosen, special. This stage is designed to lower your guard, to establish trust before the real game begins. What appears as connection is actually preparation, an invitation into the web. Then the body shifts. The gestures that once felt inviting become commanding. They occupy more space, their shoulders square, their chin lifts slightly higher. The pauses in conversation grow longer, calculated silences meant to unnerve. A hand that once reassured now presses, a gaze that once charmed now pins. This is the stage of dominance. The body no longer asks for your attention, it demands it. You find yourself adapting, adjusting, shrinking subtly without realizing why. It is not what they say, but the posture of authority, the quiet insistence of control that bends the interaction in their favor. And finally, when the cycle nears its end, the mask begins to slip. The contempt that was carefully hidden reveals itself in tiny flashes. A smirk that doesn't match the words, eyes that flicker with boredom as you speak, a dismissive shrug disguised as indifference. These micro-gestures are the seeds of discard, the signs that you are no longer useful in their theater of control. To the untrained observer, it may look like moodiness or distraction, but once you recognize the cycle, you see the contempt for what it is, the signal that the play has ended, and a new target will soon be chosen. The structure never changes. Seduction, domination, discard. Each phase has its own body language, its own silent choreography. And because it operates beneath conscious awareness, most people mistake the cycle for normal human fluctuation. But in truth, it is a ritual of power repeated endlessly, a rhythm of manipulation that only breaks when you learn to read it. Once you see the cycle, you cannot unsee it. And in that recognition, the spell begins to dissolve. And now I turn the question to you. How many times have you sat across from someone and felt a chill in their gaze, even though their words seemed perfectly polite? How many times have you received a smile that should have warmed you, yet instead left you feeling strangely hollow, as if the smile carried no life behind it? Have you ever noticed the subtle lean forward, not in affection or curiosity, but in something sharper, like a predator closing the distance, testing your boundaries without a single word spoken? These are not coincidences. They are the quiet signals of control that most people overlook. The real danger lies not in the gestures themselves, but in your willingness to ignore them. Because every time you excuse that cold stare, every time you rationalize that uncomfortable touch, every time you dismiss that micro-expression of contempt as nothing, you are allowing the mask to remain intact. The narcissist counts on your blindness. They thrive in the gap between what their body reveals and what their words disguise. But once you begin to notice, the entire game unravels. The stage lights come on, and the performance no longer works on you. So I ask you, who in your life has shown you these signs? Whose smile didn't quite reach the eyes? Whose presence felt heavy, suffocating even when they claimed to care? When you look back, do you now see the pattern, seduction, domination, discard, hidden in their movements? Recognizing these signals is not paranoia, it is self-defense. It is how you step out of their web before it tightens around you. I want you to take this awareness beyond the screen. Start watching, not obsessively but consciously. See how people's words align or fail to align with their bodies, and then share your experience. Tell me in the comments, which of these signals have you already witnessed? Which ones woke you up to the reality behind the mask? Because by speaking it, by naming it, you not only protect yourself, you help others see what they too have been conditioned to ignore. Awareness spreads, and every awakened eye makes the narcissist's theater less powerful. Machiavelli would remind us that power is rarely where it pretends to be. It hides not in the polished words or in the carefully woven promises, but in the silent theater of gestures that most people never bother to read. The narcissist knows this, even if only instinctively. They depend on your blindness, on your willingness to take their words at face value, while ignoring the rigid posture, the cold stare, the subtle smirk of contempt. To fall for the mask is to be caught in the trap, but to see the body for what it reveals is to step outside their game entirely. And once you step out, you can never be controlled the same way again. This is why the knowledge you've begun to gather here is not trivial, it is armor. Reading the body of a narcissist is not about curiosity. It is about survival, about reclaiming the ground of your own mind and refusing to be scripted into their performance. The moment you notice the manipulation, it loses its grip. The predator's lean no longer intimidates. The hollow smile no longer deceives. The silence no longer traps you because you see the strategy behind it. Awareness becomes liberation, and liberation becomes strength. So let this be more than just information. Let it be initiation. You are no longer the passive spectator of their theater. You are the one who sees behind the curtain. And if you want to go further, if you want to learn how to not only defend yourself, but wield the same silent tools, how to use your gaze, your silence, your presence as invisible weapons of power, then stay with me. Subscribe, join this journey, and step deeper into the psychology of influence. Because this is only the beginning. What you've learned today is the first step in dismantling illusions, but the real mastery lies in turning perception into power. The choice is yours. Remain blind to the body's truth, or begin to see what few dare to see.